Hello and welcome to the channel. Time to catch up with the sale results for Mathewsons Classic Car Auction for September 2025. As always, I won't be covering the full sale results and I'm just picking out the lots that interested me. And as I've said before, the price is listed at the hammer price. So remember, buyer's premium and VAT needed to be added on top to work out the total. So let's get straight in with lot 48. And that's a 1973 Honda CL350 Flying Dragon. Interesting one, this one. They were only available as a special order and they were known for the psychedelic paintwork. Available in 4 colour combinations: green purple, silver purple, gold purple and blue dark blue. The paint effect was produced using a drip transfer process apparently, and each job was different, just like a fingerprint. They were only available on the CL350 and 450, and they were only produced for 1972 and 73. It's one fancy machine and one fancy estimate, 20 to 30,000 pound. So how did it perform? Dave offered an opening bid on this one of £15,000, saying he couldn't go any lower. But there were no takers and this lot was passed. On to a couple of commercials, and we're going to take a look at lot 54. That's the Peugeot 504 pickup. Now, to see a 504 nowadays is quite a rare sight, but to see a pickup has got to be rarer still. The 504 came out in 1968 and it was in production until 1983, but it continued to be produced in various countries up until 2006, believe it or not. The pickup was still in production for Europe until 1997. This one's showing 27,000 miles, and it's got to be quite rare as well as useful, and I think it looks quite smart. The estimate, £6,500 to £7,500, and it started at £7,000, and this was in demand, and no real surprise. The bids kept coming, with a final bid of £11,200 securing the pickup. Similarly, lot 192, the Renault 4 van, and that's another rare sight now. I knew someone who had one in this very colour actually. Its estimate is £3,500 to £4,500, but this one needs a bit of work to the body. Again, let's see how this one fared. Well, it sold for an amazing £6,500. That's commercial vehicles for you. On to lot 70, the 1997 Ford Scorpio Ultima 16-valve automatic. So it's got the 2.3 engine and it's showing just 91,000 miles. And it's been owned by the current owner for the last 25 years. These weren't very well received when they were first released in 1994, and I think its styling put a lot of people off. Has the passage of time helped them? Well, I don't know, but I quite like them. And again, they are another rare sight now. I remember travelling in one in London, and I thought how nice they were inside, quite sumptuous with the leather upholstery. And as the name suggests, they were the top of the range, and they came with a CD auto changer, climate control, leather seats, cruise control, automatically dimming mirror, and electrically operated seats, as well as a variety of other minor improvements. A lovely town or motorway cruiser, and an estimate of £2,000 to £3,000 seems like a lot of car for the money. Well, it opened and it closed on its maiden bid of just £2,000. What a bargain. I think people have missed a real treat with this one. Moving on very briefly to lot 92, a 2006 Ford Mustang. And that sure does look a lot of car for the money, with an estimate of £6,000 to £7,000. Bidding opened at £6,000 and the hammer fell at £6,800. And just as it did, a further bid of £6,900 came in. But it was too late. The hammer had already fallen and they were advised, you were too slow, you've missed it for £100. On to lot 118, the 1979 Mini 1100 Special. And I remember when these were launched back in August 1979 because I bought a copy of Autocar or Motor magazine where it featured on the front page and it was sat on the top of a birthday cake with candles, as I recall. And it was introduced to celebrate the Mini's 20th birthday. Now you had a choice of two colour schemes, metallic silver with a black vinyl roof, or this rose metallic with a beige vinyl roof. And I'd love to have had one in the rose metallic because I think it was the best colour. The colour wasn't used on any other model than the Special. They featured clubman style bumpers and they had the black centre grille and they had these innocenti wheel arch extensions along with special graduated stripes that ran along the side of the car with these special alloy wheels which were often referred to as 1100 special wheels. And just so you were left in no doubt that it was a special, it featured a mini special decal on the A panel and a special badge on the front grille and boot lid. They also had side indicators which were placed higher up the front wing and were longer than those that had been used on previous Minis. Inside the car, you had this tartan check trim, which was black and grey for the silver car and beige for the rose metallic. And they came with a 1275 GT instrument cluster, along with a unique centre console and a two-spoke sport steering wheel. You even got a radio, a clock, and a cigar lighter. This really was one special little car, and the cost £3,300. Mechanical upgrades included the fitting of a 1098cc engine as fitted to the Clubman, and it was the only non-Clubman model to use the Clubman engine. Initially, a run of 2,500 was planned, but they sold out so quickly that they actually built a further 2,600, taking the total built to 5,100. This was, as I say, a really special little car. Now on to the sale, and the estimate on this was £5,000 to £6,000, which seemed quite cheap. But prior to the sale, it received 11 pre-sale bids, taking it up to £9,000. The Hammer finally fell on a sale price of £9,400. Lot 149, the 1989 Mercedes 190. 2.5 16 valve, and I've always liked the baby Benz, and I think this one ticks a lot of the boxes. It's finished in astral silver, and as you see, it comes with the body kit, and it's got the leather upholstery and the 2.5 engine. Owned for 30 years, it's been fitted with a stainless exhaust, and at some point they tell us that it's had new front wings and rear arches along with a full respray, and I must say it does look rather well. It's showing 165,000 miles, although it doesn't look it, and it's also had a cylinder head overhaul with a new timing chain and tensioner. Estimate 14 to £18,000, and the bidding started at 11,250, but it fell far short of the lower estimate with a provisional sale of just £11,500. And it appears that after a further little negotiation, it does finally appear to have sold for £12,000. So what about this one, lot 200, and it's a 1981 VW Derby GLS, so it's the Polo with a boot. And it's showing 19,274 miles, presented in this rather attractive pale green metallic, and it does look rather well. The subject of some restoration work 7 years ago, along with a respray. A few little bits needed here and there, but overall it's very presentable and a rare sight again nowadays. Estimate £7,500 to £8,500, and the bidding opened at £6,000, and it closed again on a provisional sale at £7,000. And like an earlier lot, a further bid came after the hammer had fallen. Too late, but it appears not too late for the lucky bidder, who appears to have converted this into a sale for its £7,000 bid. On to lot 232, the 1964 Amphicar 770. I've always found these interesting. So this car's a 1964, and as you see, it's left-hand drive because it's been imported from the US by its current owner in 2005. Now, they're called the 770 because they're supposed to be capable of 7 knots on water and 70 miles an hour on land. And they were launched at the New York Auto Show back in 1961. They continued to be marketed until 1968. Designed by Hans Trippel, They were built in West Germany, initially at Lübeck, with production later moving to Berlin. Of course, the Germans have a history of producing amphibious vehicles, the most successful being the Volkswagen Schwimmwagen, used by the Wehrmacht during World War II. They used a Triumph Herald engine, which was mounted in the rear of the vehicle, and it was said to be state of the art at the time. Other engines have been tried, but they've been found not to be suitable, and I think a lot of this was to do with balance and weight. They built a total of 3,878 cars, of which 3,046 of them were imported to the USA, which was its biggest marketplace. And one of its most well-known owners was President Lyndon B. Johnson. They didn't come to the UK until 1964, and they only built 97 right-hand drive vehicles. As far as I know, there may only be about 7 left. And it was a change in the US environmental legislation in 1968 that saw an end to the Amphicar, which meant that no new cars could be registered in the US, which accounted for approximately 90% of its sales, and this led to the closure of the factory. It's claimed that the Amphicar had the highest rear fins of any production car, about 1 inch higher than a '59 Cadillac, and that's quite a bold statement. The high fins you would think were more to do with the era in which the cars were built, but the fins actually had a more serious purpose, and that was to stop sidewash swamping the engine compartment. They were available in 4 colours: beach sand white, regatta red, lagoon blue and fjord green, which is what this car is, and it's described as a mint green, but I'd say it's more like a turquoise, and it's a beautiful colour, and I think personally it's the most striking of them all. And I saw a right-hand drive one at Castle Howard 2 years ago in fjord green, and it was absolutely magnificent. And if you wanted to buy one in the UK when they were new, the sole UK concessionaire was held by Sydney Marcus Limited, 33 Sloane Street, London, and the original price was £995. So what are they like to drive? Well, I don't know because I've never driven one, but it'd be great to find out. But what we can do is review an article that was in Classic and Sports Car back in September 1983. It goes on to tell us that the owner of the car featured commented that as a car or a boat, the Amphicar was a bit of a joke. So how do you get into the water and what happens next? Well, that's the difficult bit. First, with the door's watertight locks activated and 2 or 4 people to aid stability, you need to preferably find a shallow concrete slipway because anything steeper or rough could pose a real problem. And when you actually enter the water, the nose tips forward and the water cascades over the front wings. Apparently, it can be a little bit unnerving for the first time, but in an instant, the body levels and you're suddenly floating. The engine's gurgling away, but to go forward, the normal gear lever slides into neutral, and the small transfer lever crunches forward to engage the twin props. Your speed is controlled by the accelerator, and for direction, the front wheels act as not very good rudders apparently. Steering is said to be slow and vague, and when you're turning to port, that's the left-hand side, the turning circle is said to be 40 feet. But if you're turning to starboard, it's 25 feet, and that's because both props spin clockwise. So what do you do when you want to return to land? Well, it's pretty much the reverse of entering the water. But when you get back onto dry land, you can't just drive off because your drum brakes will be fully waterlogged. And if you did, you wouldn't have any brakes for the first half mile. The road test tells us that the first few miles can seem quite perilous because the steering's vague. And it goes on to say that the brake pedal requires the strength of Hercules. As regards to the ride, it can feel quite billowy. The owner ends by saying he detests it most affectionately. I think they're an absolute engineering marvel. And I think you can forgive its foibles for everything else it has to offer. I think they're fantastic, and I'd love to own one. I always remember an Amphicar featuring in the 1966 film The Sandwich Man. Not much of a film, but I remembered it because of the car. Michael Bentine played a sandwich board man, and if you don't know what that is, basically he was a human advertising display, and he walked all over London advertising a product. It ended up with him getting into an Amphicar and sailing off up the Thames. Estimate 20 to £25,000, and Dave took the rostrum for this one, and the bidding started at 22,500 and it quickly rose to 26,500. The bids kept coming, with the lucky winner Ryan in Cheshire securing the car for £36,000, which I think was quite a good result considering it still looks to need work to bring it up to the standard that it should be. And if ever there was a car that needed to be viewed before purchase, this is certainly one of those cars. Lot 286, a 1962 Mini Cooper, finished in surf blue with a white roof. They tell us it was restored in 2000, and I think it looks rather spectacular. Looks very simple, yet it looks so right. I would say it doesn't need anything else. The icing on the cake, well, that number plate which comes with the car. Nice, and nice to have it with the car. The good thing as well is that it's non-transferable, so it can't be stripped from it. I always think it's a bit of a shame when a car starts out with what was essentially just a number plate. The car survives all those years, and then someone goes and strips it from the car just to make a few pounds, and then for it to be given a non-entity number plate. And in doing so, I think it loses a bit of its identity and its uniqueness. I think it's a rather smart-looking car, and I think that number plate just looks great with it. Estimate 17,550 to 19,500. I wonder how it got on, but let's find out. Listening to the auction on this one was hard work because every bid seemed to be a struggle until it finally got into a rhythm, and the hammer finally fell just short of the lower estimate at a provisional sale of £17,200. That said, it appears it was enough to secure it, as it's now showing as sold for that very amount. How the tide turns, though. It's only a matter of a couple of years ago that Coopers and Cooperesses were making their way up to £50,000. Lot 308, and onto something rather special, and it's a 1964 Vauxhall Cresta PB. And it's such a long time since I've seen one of these. And typically, like buses, two come along together, as there's another one in the sale. However, I've singled this one out because it's a little bit special, as it's one of only 25 built by renowned coach builder Harold Radford, who was known for working on Rolls-Royce and Bentleys, and of course was the man who was responsible for Peter Sellers' early Minis. It's believed to be the only remaining example left. The Cresta came with a choice of a 2.6 or a 3.3 litre engine, and this car has the 3.3, and it's showing just 62,000 miles. The changes included a different front grille, and it had these quad headlamps and front fog lamps. It also came with separate reclining and height adjustable front seats with individual armrests, which were upholstered, of course, in the finest quality hides. And you had lambswool carpets, a West of England cloth headlining, and in the rear, you even had picnic tables along with reading lamps. It was also fitted with a rear window demister, and in the rear armrest, you got a second lockable glove box. You also got a radio with an electric aerial, as well as an oil pressure gauge and an ammeter. And in the front doors, you had these red warning lights and these marker lights on the C-pillars. This conversion cost you an additional £466 and 10 shillings. That's £466 50 over the £1,058 for the standard Cresta automatic. Estimate 10 to £11,000, and it started at £7,500 and it stalled at £8,000 with no further bids, and it appears to remain available. Just going to take a very quick look at Lot 312, the 1982 Datsun Cherry, another rare survivor. Estimate £2,500 to £3,500, and there seem to be no shortage of bids for this lot, with it finally selling for £4,200. Moving on to Lot 334, this rather nice Bentley Mulsanne S. And this one looks rather nice, better than most, I would say. Lovely interior and wood. Excellent looking bodywork. I mean, just look at those wheel arches. 85,000 miles, and its estimate is £8,000 to £10,000. So I would say if it goes for anywhere near that, that seems like a good buy. And again, a lot of car for the money. On the day, it only achieved a highest bid of £6,500 and it appears to remain available. The next lot is 362 and it's a 1971 Wolseley 1885 showing 71,000 miles and it's finished in a colour called Wild Moss. This, of course, was the forerunner to the Wolseley 6, which replaced it in 1972. And the differences between the 6 and the 1885 were the headlamp bezels, which for the 1885, as you see, were all silver. The 6 had black light surrounds. Another immediate identifier was that the 1885 had 3 chrome strips along the front panel either side of the grille, whereas the 6 had 4 strips. And with the 1885, you got the wood door capings. But these don't look quite right to me. They look as though somebody's done something with them because they should have a nice burr finish to them. And of course, it's got the correct vinyl seats. Sounds very nice on tick over. Estimate £3,000 to £4,000 and it's sold above its estimate at £4,400. What about this for something different? Lot 372, and it's the Pontiac Trans Sport GT. 91,000 miles. I would say they're perhaps not for everyone, but you are sure to draw attention, and I think it offers a lot of money again. 7 seats, boot space. What more do you need? Estimate £2,000 to £3,000, and the bidding opened and it closed at £1,600, which was enough to convert it into a sale. That was cheap. Lot 420, a 1979 Series 3 Jaguar XJ6, and it's in rather an unusual colour. It's not one I recall, but I do think it looks rather pleasing, particularly with the lovely red interior. 55,000 miles, coming from long-term ownership over 30 years. A smart-looking car. Let's see how it got on. Estimate £3,000 to £4,000. The bidding started at £6,500 and it's sold to Guy in Guernsey for £9,000. Another excellent result. Lot 488, a 1963 BMW 700 CS Coupe. And strangely enough, I was looking at one of these recently at a car show in Germany. This has got to be quite rare, and more so with it being right-hand drive. It's painted in BMW Atacama yellow, and unusually, it's rear-engined. Quite a write-up on the restoration. This one was submit best bid, and it opened at £12,000, with the final bid of £13,300 being submitted for consideration by the vendor. This was later confirmed as sold. Lot 506, the 1974 Vauxhall VX490 from the FE Victor range, which of course was known as the Transcontinental. Owned by the same family since it was 3 months old, and it's finished in this really rather standout golden yellow, which I like. I think it suits the car well. The vinyl roof looks nice, and it's got an 80s sunroof, which may put some off. But with this car, it doesn't put me off. It's just natural progression. The family obviously later opted for a sunroof. It's just part of its history, and I don't think it detracts from what is still a lovely car. And if you want one of these, I think you'd have to go a long way to find better. The estimate, £5,500 to £6,500. Well, it exceeded the upper estimate with an opening bid of £8,750, but it wasn't done there. And the final and winning bid of £19,600 secured the car. What a great result. What about this one then? Lot 582, the 1978 Tomaso Longchamp. Quite a long production run on these from 1972 to 1989. And they used to be one of these used to live near me back in the early 80s. And it's also right-hand drive, and they reckon there were only 15 right-hand drive built. The interior doesn't look too bad at all. It'll be interesting to see how this one gets on. I dare say it's going to need a bit to get it back to its former glory, though. Estimate £7,500 to £8,500. But was there any interest? Yes, there was, and it sold for £6,100. Lot 776, the Jaguar E-Type V12, 52,000 miles, and in my favourite colour for one of these, primrose yellow. The estimate's £25,000 to £26,000, which seems ridiculously cheap for a roadster. It looks to be a basically very sound and original car with just a few paint imperfections. And I think you could either choose just to enjoy it as it is, because there doesn't appear to be anything detrimental, or you could spend £10,000 on it and you could have a good paint job and a real show winner. It opened at the lower estimate with a bid of £25,000 and it sold for £30,200. That's cheap, and I would say there's plenty left in the budget to make it into something rather spectacular. Lot 792, the Ford Capri 280 Brooklands, the limited edition run-out model with a full leather interior. 68,000 miles and owned for 23 years. And when this car went on sale, I believe the model was starting to get to the point where they couldn't give them away. They were hanging around at dealerships. And I remember looking at one of these new back in 1987 at FF English in Bournemouth. And I think the price was £13,000. Estimate 17,500 to 19,500. The bidding began at 18,250 and it sold mid-estimate at £18,750. Lot 794, and I think this one's a little bit intriguing. It's a 1975 Ford Consul 2.5 estate car, unusual and a rare version. And it'd be interesting to know more about its history because under the bonnet it appears to have had twin batteries and twin coils. I'm not sure the reason. Comes with a boot full of spares. An interesting car. Let's see how it got on. Estimate £6,000 to £8,000, and it came from the same stable apparently as the 280 Capri. It sold for just above the lower estimate at £6,100. Lot 826, the Jensen Interceptor, which looks to be another restoration project. Or is it? Doesn't have a particularly high estimate, and it's obviously going to need quite a bit of work. But looking at that immediately says to me it's worth it in just parts alone. More interesting this one than you might expect, with it selling for £4,800. And it doesn't seem that long ago. I remember when this would have bought you a fully roadworthy, tidy and MOT'd Interceptor, and you might even have still had some change left. Next up is Lot 850, the Toyota Celica. Put this in a lineup of classic cars, and I think it's sure to draw attention because of its looks, and I think it'll transport you straight back to 1983. Think Uptown Girl, Red Wine, Karma Chameleon. I'm Still Standing, and you're already there. Its sharp looks are so defining, and this car really looks rather nice. I love the colour, and I like this one very much. It's just so different, and I think this could be a very smart buy. They've given this one quite a wide estimate at £3,000 to £6,000, and it's sold at just over the mid-estimate at £4,800. And I personally think that was another cheap car and a real bargain. Go find another, as they say. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.